Hi, I'm Lenora Williams, your nonprofit guru, and welcome to the Nonprofit Corner. I have a very special guest this evening. Her name is Kia Kroom, and Kia is special to me because she actually does work and has experience being a fiscal sponsor and working with nonprofits to have fiscal sponsorship. And she's also a grant writer and a very good one.
Thank
So
you.
I really feel honored to have her as a guest. So welcome, Kia.
Thank you.
So can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about fiscal sponsorship and grant writing?
Absolutely. So I'm Kia Kroom. I'm a nonprofit consultant, practitioner. I've been for the last 11 years. I am the proprietor of a small firm here in the Bay Area called Your Biz Consulting Firm. And we work with nonprofit organizations. We believe that nonprofits are the backbone within communities, neighborhoods. They provide vital services. So we take it as an honor to work with them and equip them with the tools and resources they need to operate sustainable programs. I have, goodness, I drew a blank. I'm sorry.
So
I just
keep
drew a blank.
talking.
In doing so, we feel that it's important that nonprofits have a solid foundation. Um, most most people that I encounter that are endeavoring to do the work that nonprofits do, they have no idea how much work is really involved in that. It's a very large undertaking. So I take it as my job to educate them and make sure that they start out properly. Now, a lot of nonprofits, I mean, you know from experience, you encounter people that have applied for a 501c3 tax exempt status, for example. But they've got a really great idea and a really great program, and they want to unveil it and roll it out in the community. They want to do the work. They want to get started. They're ready to dive in head first, roll up their sleeves, and start, feeding people out of the soup kitchen, or administering tutoring to children and youth, or operating a group home, for example. But there's a little process here that's involved, and it can take anywhere from 6 months to a year, to complete the state filings, the federal filings that establish the agency and insulate the employees working for the agency and the volunteers and the members of the board that are wanting to provide this work. So what happens is sometimes these nonprofits, again, very well intentioned, wanting to roll their sleeves up and jump in and do all this wonderful work in the community, they're a little challenged, and they don't necessarily have the capacity to operate, these types of programs. They may have funding limitations. They may, have some grant opportunities that they want to go after, but they don't necessarily have the established track record to do so. They don't necessarily have the financial documents that they would need in order to be, to start up. To get the startup capital. So what I do is I facilitate a relationship in which an agency like that can sign on with a fiscal sponsor, being a larger nonprofit with an established track record, a long-standing history, financial capability, or fiscal capability as we know it to be in the community. A nonprofit agency can partner with this larger organization, kind of go underneath this organization's umbrella and administer their programming. So if you look at it, essentially this nonprofit that's looking to establish, kind of puts its program underneath this larger program, and they're able to utilize this organization's financials. They're able to utilize this organization's board members. Generally speaking, these smaller agencies have a board of 2 to 3 individuals that in this case would serve as an advisory board to this larger organization's board, advocating for their program. So I'm the go-between. I facilitate that kind of relationship in an effort to help these smaller organizations start, get established, and get out here and do what I consider to be really, really meaningful work. I'm fortunate in that I've been employed for the last 3 years with one of the larger organizations in the Bay Area called GRIP, located in
GRIP.
Contra Costa County.
Yes, I've heard great things about them.
Yes, GRIP provides fiscal sponsorship to a host of organizations. And these agencies can rest assured that, you know, they are working with a reputable fiscal sponsor that's, you know, well known throughout the Bay Area. One that provides a host of risk management services for everything from human resource management to, you know, I don't know, providing financial reports. So I mean, it's quite a bit, but the benefit is that a smaller organization can operate its programs, can fundraise under the auspices of a larger agency with an established track record. And this relationship can be in place for as long as the two entities see fit.
So that means that they have to write some kind of understanding,
Absolutely.
a contract between them
Absolutely.
that establishes up front how long they want to have their relationship.
Absolutely. So what happens is there's a fiscal sponsorship agreement which informs a number of things. It informs the length of time that the relationship will be intact. It informs and here's the kicker, it informs the amount of money that the parent organization or the fiscal sponsor will charge the smaller agency to administer its funding. Because again, the whole nature of the relationship is that this fiscal sponsor, this larger, thriving agency, absolves all the risk on behalf of this smaller agency to operate its programs and services. So with that being said, whatever monies the smaller organization gets, they're funneled through the larger organization, if you will, and the larger organization will take a negligible fee.
What is negligible?
A negligible fee.
Let's talk
Okay.
about that. What do the percentages really look like?
I've seen percentages as small as about 10 to 12%, which is on average is what GRIP, assesses
And you
to
have
its
to tell us
clients.
what GRIP is. No,
Okay.
not just the acronym. Tell us what GRIP stands for.
So GRIP is the Greater Richmond Interfaith Program,
Okay.
one of the larger homeless service organizations in Contra Costa in Richmond. GRIP provides a large gamut of homeless assistance services, everything from emergency shelter for homeless families to basic services where folks can come to the facility and bathe and wash their clothes. They can get a meal. Onward to more supportive services like case management. Helping an individual get on track and go into the workforce, helping broken families reunify. GRIP has a permanent supportive housing program for people who are dually diagnosed and mentally ill. So providing people that would not ordinarily be able to live on their own in a community with safe and quality housing.
So now, how did GRIP get into fiscal sponsorship? Because some of the programs, I'm certain, that are under GRIP may or may not have anything to do with the programs they, in fact, are responsible for.
Certainly. So GRIP's roots are in social justice. GRIP started out, I want to say in the 1960s. There was a lot of agitation, racial tensions in the Richmond community. So a group of faith leaders put together what they believed would be an agency that would address those racial tensions, that would respond to the needs of the community members, the poor and disenfranchised. They felt as though they were voiceless in Richmond. There was a lot of poverty. And this organization would respond to it. It would feed the need, if you will. So you're absolutely right in that a lot of the organizations that have come on board as fiscally sponsored projects, they don't necessarily have to have a homeless mission. In fact, many of them do not. However, what they do have in common is an interest in helping, populations that are typically traditionally marginalized, low-income households, low-income individuals, underserved children and youth, domestic violence victims, persons infected with HIV/AIDS, persons at risk. So any population of people that is marginalized that doesn't necessarily have a voice. Again, GRIP has its roots are vested in social justice reform. So any agency with a mission, a human service mission to benefit these populations is welcome.
Okay, so I guess the other question, if I were a listener, is do I have to be a nonprofit of faith?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
In fact, GRIP is not a faiths organization, although its roots are strong in that it was founded by some faith, thought leaders. Mm-hmm. GRIP is actually a community-based organization, so agencies definitely need not be a faiths agency to fit.
Do they have to be in Contra Costa?
They do not.
Okay, so they don't have to be in the county of Contra Costa. They can really come from all over the Bay Area.
Absolutely. We have fiscally sponsored projects in Alameda County, Contra Costa County, Solano County. We're all over the place.
Now I'm going to go back to the money question.
Let's.
How much do you really charge me? I'm a startup. I don't have any money, but my paperwork is still in the works. I have some donors that really want to talk to me. I need a bank account because people are giving me money and I have no place to deposit that money. IRS has told me it's going to be 3 to 9 months. I've finished everything, but I'm in a waiting game. So now I'm at GRIP and I'm sitting down, I'm talking to you. I have some projected revenues. What can I expect to pay you for your services?
Anywhere from 10 12%. I have seen some fiscal sponsors charge as much as 18, 19, 20%. But GRIP is really, really, sensitive to the needs of these agencies. GRIP was once that agency. So its administrators, its board, its volunteers understand the limitations. And, assess what I consider to be a negligible fee, in comparison.
And when we say percentage, we're talking about of the total revenue.
Yes.
Okay.
So if an agency gets, $1,000 grant, then GRIP would likely take 10% for admin, for bookkeeping, and, its accounting purposes for administering that funding.
I'm going to move away from fiscal sponsorship. I think there's a lot of questions that come to me. So I find a fiscal sponsor. I don't really have any employees. I don't really need them to do my payroll. And if I have employees, I may want to do an independent payroll service. How do I get a checking account? Does a checking account have to go under the fiscal sponsor? Or can I open my own checking account given that I have my articles of incorporation, I have my EIN number, but I don't have my nonprofit number yet? So I think a lot of those really basic questions are questions of startup agencies that I think you could help enlighten them.
So what typically happens, again, the benefit to these smaller agencies is that they have this established company that has a bank account. So for example, if you were representing one of the smaller agencies and you had a funder that gave you that wanted to fund your program $10,000, you would have that funder make a $10,000 grant to GRIP on your behalf. The program, it might be kind of like a care of situation. This might be, the Lenore Williams Foundation, but the check goes to the Greater Richmond Interfaith Program, care
Wait, you
of
tell me
Lenore
I don't get
Williams.
my money?
Well, again, it's not to say that you don't get your money, but again, remember, you're a smaller agency, you're in the waiting game, so technically you're not a tax-exempt entity yet. So the funder, in giving you a $10,000 grant, a $500 grant, a $100 gift, would not realize a tax deduction. That's their impetus for doing this. They believe in you and your programming, but at the end of the day, they want their contribution in most cases to be tax deductible. So in making the contribution to GRIP is where they're able to realize the tax deduction. So GRIP will receive this grant on behalf of the Lenora Williams Foundation. GRIP is going to take its 10% of the $10,000